Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates. Inside Story Uganda.
Nankabirwa another woman must light the fire.
Another woman ni
sija muogera.
Okay. Nankabireka gota yagala ego yatula.
Muogera.
Olyomulala Muganda.
Agenda kulekanga kolizzo muri mu parliament.
Olyomulala Muganda.
Must attack Kadaga bare knuckle.
Bize urutalo rutandise
katika katwale wa president
nankabirwa yakora
kagenze no genda kawedde wenkogerera nga kagenze
misembulire Kadaga yakora kinanga
amuyadde aba independence n'abawo okola if we allow this woman is now the most influential personality in East Africa
kikibaluma
tunamujawo
so we are worried about our own being.
Let me tell you people politics is a game where extra time is dangerous. Besi jaliwa. Tinyefunza aliwa.
Telefona extra time.
Mugunde yaliko wamanya aliwa.
Kakuru kwa bade mukande.
Politics sakutisa munno. Nature can solve many things. Nature can solve many things. Neyo nzichemba ukanako. To have ambition is not bad, but it's a methodology that you can install machines in the Kadaga's office. You encouraging ochusama lobozi kafanana ka Bobby Wine. Record this. President jabifuna.
Osobola okutwala ogende wa
president. Yagenze da ate chano yababulada.
Anti bagambye ndi Bobby Wine be yakubide Kadaga simu bogera mwao kubanga ayagala support ya NUP engeri jesinga mu. Bigete bugesi.
Andi nkubuli bigete. Machines must be installed in the Kadaga's office, and they mention the names of people who must be in charge of installing the machines.
Then they are bad people.
Yes. I fight the methodology. 5 billion. You have it. 5 billion is available.
Okay. 5
billion. 5 billion. Katika connected na president kubanga yakagambye. When you go to the president, distort this information against Kadaga. Nkaba tera mukampuli Kirumi every maggot will be paid for by 2 human beings. Every maggot coming out of my corpus will be paid for by 2 human beings.
Envunywe munga yenkana kana abantu babiri.
Yes.
Ngabana va mfamily z'abantu.
Omutego gumanyi gwe kibayita omutego.
Ngabava mfamily z'abantu.
Omutego ogulama.
Ntamale.
Ugenda mu lusozi n'okunama n'ofuwa media ya mitu 10.
Sibayo asumali basanga.
Kuba kunyuma bwoti asirana. Kuba kunyuma asirana. Bani ekibasobola dogoti.
Tamale tojjagenda mutagwe.
Tojjagenda kisobola joguli obulenzi buno n'abasajja bano dogoti.
Tojja kuyingira.
Sema ikezi k'abantu bano omulundi gumu. Kukuba mwana wange tebali kiddamu. Mutani wana ni
omukodomi wange asumani basalirwa mukutubida akulamisiza agambye nti muko omukukuna vumundabire and remind him that we shall sort the Kadaga issue.
Do you have the 5 billion
on the floor of the house?
Do you have the 5 billion? Do you have people who can attack Kadaga bare knuckle like Nankabirwa?
Anti kakati ono Kadaga
Nankabirwa has been assigned to leave the fire burning in the parliament.
Okay.
A young miso yo in a video in any recordings.
Bwino mkaka.
Teweka toinza kwegana. Ndisisiga bifana. Simusizi wa bifana. Benka kutwalira. Benka twalayo. Kabaka genze. Ate kagenze dda.
Achimanyi nti Boba MPs bagenda okusorting out ensonga eyo.
Era 5 billion era bagambye who has this money? 5 billion where is it?
Serinya lukaba mkwano gwo nyo.
Because yes, you must be tough on this drunkard. When you go to the president, make sure that you are in Kadaga. We must install machines in Kadaga's office. Nerinya ne muri ogera ko mugendo okula. Nga mise balaba bweti. Ebyuma byababula.
Kubagendo okula.
Military intelligence ebinonyeze emyezi 6 ne bikibula. Ne bakola conclusion. Biri Moscow. eno satellite ye bikuba.
Okay. Atulisa, kansome, ntandikira wa? Why 7 years?
Yes.
7 years.
Yes.
Ndiko page munana, chitabu kino chibaita the wisdom of a fisherman, ndiko page number 8. Subtopic egamba, why 7 years? This is not important. The 7 years is just a diversion. This can be deleted on the way or rejected by the parliament. What is important to the Kakoza group is to ensure Museveni's successor does not enjoy unlimited presidential terms. But the problem with Ugandan politicians is that when they are advancing political arguments, they forget about their earlier positions. For example, it was stated that Uganda amended its constitution in order to make it flexible. My question now, has the NRM changed this position? Why? What is the situation that required a flexible constitution that has now changed today? Number 2, we've been defending the president's continued stay in power on grounds that he is revolutionary politics like NRM. What is important is not the term limits, but the challenges ahead and most suitable persons to face those challenges. Okweti Korubengo. Now, if we say term limits, we are saying that the NRM is no longer a revolutionary party that is guided by term limits, but challenges ahead. These are not simple issues, as the likes of Kakoza do believe. They are sensitive issues to matters concerning the party ideology. The Kakoza group should be contented with one thing: they should not be fearful of the future. What shapes future politics is institutions and not political maneuverings. Those who tried to block Daniel Arap Moi failed, and they failed, and the country paid dearly, What is imperative today is to ensure a peaceful entrance and to exit from power. Ensure that there are mechanisms that can stop a bad leader from being a president of Uganda. Ensure that there are strong institutions that can shape the leader. Ensure that there is wide exit space through which a leader can leave power. Nobody, including medical doctors, can understand the minds of individuals. This is a price that former presidents Frederick Chiluba of Zambia and Bakili Muluzi of Malawi have to pay at the hands of their hand-picked successors. Rules of succession. I hope the Kakoza group do understand the rules of succession. Succession politics has guidelines and rules. This is why I have included this chapter in my submission. Factors that determine succession include the 2 scenarios where the incumbents can either voluntarily retire or is forced out of power. The latter scenario implies that he will have no role in determining the successor. The voluntary retirement is such that the incumbent remains in a strong position to influence and determine the successor. It then naturally follows that the incumbent cannot cede power to somebody he does not know. Knowing in politics does not stop at somebody's name or face. It extends to a historical bond. Experience shows that it's highly risky for an incumbent to entrust power to somebody without a historical link. By this I mean a long-term relationship. You must have guarantors who can invoke this historical bond if he or she turns hostile. Nelson Mandela in South Africa ensured this in the hands of Thabo Mbeki when he succeeded him. Secondly, the leader does not entrust power to somebody who cannot easily establish his or her easily establish his or her own political base within a very short time. It is advisable to incumbents to remain with some sort of influence in the government for the first 5 years following their retirement. This is because human nature loves freedom. It seeks to get out of the shadow of a predecessor and establish their own identity and legacy. A person who can easily establish a political power base gets new friends and is easily hijacked by the political opportunists of his new base. Lastly, a leader should hand over to somebody who attributes the fate to the retiring president. You hand over power to a protege, or somebody who feels that his successor is attributed to. This is what we call politics of overwhelming. A person who believes that his or her achievements are related to one's own individual abilities and popularity is usually politically dangerous. However, even the turncoats or weak leaders are dangerous. They become an easy target to political manipulation by the opponents and try to prove that they are not dependent on the retired president. A retiring president should never underestimate his successor's political abilities. People change and they are not static. As I pointed out earlier, there is no person who can accurately predict another's mind. Many are pretenders, and furthermore, politics, money, and religion change people's attitudes and behavior. This is because they attract new friends with different motives. This explains why when people get money and power or get married, they change friends. In Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and the Kikuyu Mafia underestimated Daniel Arap Moi. They believe that since Moi came from a small tribe among the Kalenjin, the Kikuyu, who had established a strong link within the government and in the private sector, would snatch power from him. They looked at Moi as a passing cloud. However, he outsmarted them by borrowing power and support from the other tribes. In Zambia, Frederick Chiluba underestimated Levi Patrick Mwanawasa. He was deceived by the medical doctors that Mwanawasa would not complete his term as president. Mwanawasa was a victim of a fatal accident that severely affected his abdomen. He reasoned that if he became president and gave him trouble, he would die within a very short time. Therefore, Chiluba suggested that the new president be deputized by a vice president who would take over upon Levi Mwanawasa's demise. But Chiluba, who later would pay heavily for this, Mwanawasa subjected himself to a long and embarrassing court process where his underpants were exposed to the public. Most of his former allies were put behind bars. Mwanawasa wished to remain and die in his own man. He did not attribute his ascendancy to the president to Chiluba's role. Chiluba failed to understand that Mwanawasa, as a private lawyer, could not pay for his huge health bills, and doctors had based their death period to this fact. However, as president of Zambia, he was waging a corruption crusade and forcing people to vomit what they had stolen. Mwanawasa's exorbitant bill was peanuts to the excited public. Therefore, it's important that the retiring president ensures his successor does not undermine his legacy. President Yoweri Museveni pointed out that he does not care about his legacy. However, this is important. Ugandans will remember Museveni, among other achievements, as a man who restored peace, stability, and human dignity and rejuvenated the country's image. Ugandans, for the first time in history, saw soldiers who do not rape women, who do not kill with impunity, or who do not steal from the public. They will remember that Museveni turned the Namamve killing fields during Amin and Lutwa's time into an industrial center. In the 70s and the mid-80s, people would scan Namamve forest on a daily basis to retrieve corpses of their dead relatives. Government soldiers would take their victims to slaughter dungeons and leave their dead bodies to be collected by the relatives for burial. The place became a mortuary of sorts. A group of youth permanently remained there to depend on the incomes of relatives searching for the lost relatives. Museveni will be remembered for the pro-people policies like the UPE, US, Ibo, Nabagagawale, PFA, etc. Prosperity for all, free and fair elections from the village level to the presidency. Therefore, no retiring president will wish to see such achievements erased by his departure. He therefore cannot hand over power to a person who threatens to undermine the above. In the case of Uganda, there must remain monuments for President Museveni. This explains why Moi did not rename Kenyatta's monuments after his own name. He put up his own structures. Even in his early days as president, Moi insisted on following the Nyayo philosophy, implying walking in Kenyatta's footsteps. A retiring president must ensure that his successor will protect members of the first family and that they have and what they have acquired. This explains why the first family must have an input in somebody to take power. Although in Zambia and Malawi, it is the former presidents who have borne the wrath of their successors. In many cases, the first family members become the punching bags of the new regime. Even while the president has committed human rights violations, anger is always meted out on the members of the first family. People often vent their anger on the members of the first family. A retiring president must ensure that his successor will protect his security and protection from persecution. He should also be able to ensure his welfare. As people move closer to a global village, internationalization is also closing in. This means that we are having new generations of rights. What was not considered as human rights violations have become so. The internationalism through new agencies like the ICC is intended to keep leaders in developing countries as to keep them on their toes. They use those who have retired to shape those taking power. Therefore, a retiring president, in choosing a successor, must bear this in mind. Finally, a retiring president must ensure that he retains some influence in the body politic of the country. The soft landing has always been a retention of the leadership of the party in case of the ruling party. However, this renders the president retiring to easily come into a collision path with the new president. The situation becomes worse when his party is not the ruling one. It's what happens in Kenya. Former President Daniel Arap Moi refused to retire as he participates actively in the country's politics, at times taking sides in very controversial government policies. This has helped him to remain relevant and defend himself against attacks from the enemies. In conclusion, what protects the country from bad leaders and national institutions that can shape a leader's conduct and behavior? The country through institutions should make both the entrance and the exit doors wide and to keep them always open. Once a leader misbehaves, there should be institutions to enforce accountability. A wise Uganda proverb says, "Omuyonjo mutono gwe guweta enkoke echinsuti," literally translated in English to connect that a cock must fit in its small cage. It's not the cage that expands to create room for it. Likewise, it should be the leaders to fit in the national institutions and not the institutions to expand and accommodate their leaders personally for personal selfish interests. Strong institutions should therefore ensure that the leaders stick to his or her roles as the leader entrusted with power. We should also borrow relief from the Islamic practice. Muslims always refer to their successful brothers and sisters in business community as Katonda Beyazika Emali. This means that God only temporarily lends them the wealth. He is free to withdraw it from you anytime. It's an apt teaching that is applicable in leadership. Applied secularly, it implies that all power enjoyed by the leaders is lent to them by the people. Anytime they come for it, it should be surrendered willingly, provided they go through their democratic means and not riots or demonstrations. I therefore submit that Kakoza's group should not waste any time on term limits. It does not take 5 years for a bad leader to show his badness. Secondly, extending the term limit from 5 to 7 years is equally dangerous. If voters cannot remove an incumbent, as Kakoza implies, this means that under the 7-year term, one person will remain in power for a good 14 years. Instead of 10 years, almost 3 times. This defeats the reason that they do not want one person to dominate power for a period longer than 10 years. Therefore, it is clear to everybody that Kakoza and group are pursuing personal vendetta. Their reasoning is that their person who is likely to take over from President Museveni should not enjoy the same working conditions and unlimited presidential terms as his predecessors. This is a very big political mistake. Political vendetta against individual enemies is very dangerous, and history shows that such fellows pay very heavily. Nkomiao. Eweyongerako wali wogera kusemogerere the genesis of
kakati sibyo bya Tamale Mirundi bebalese 7 years
kubanga boyagala emyaka 10 ate kitegeeza nti gino gifudde emyaka ofudde ebisanja bisatu kubanga emyaka gibera oli myaka gyeyongeddeko boyongera
yes kakati kitegeeza what are you mitigating against mbu we shall mitigate against the North African revolutions were they because of term limits. If people are tired of the president because he has stayed in the power for 10 years, 2 terms, would they accept somebody who is 14?
Kubanga baba mchongeddeko bonge.
Era nabagani Kakoza mujinga. Bodira ebikopo bisatu ebya chai. No biteka mu tipoti bifoka bibiri. Nti bobiye mirundi esatu. Kambi kutere mu tipoti. Bifoka bibiri. The quantity remains.
Kubanga omusanvu gukwe emyaka 14.
Yes.
Atenga 5 gukwe emyaka 15. Kakati kitegeeza nti obanga afuze ebisanja bisatu bye 5 mu bibiri ebyo musanvu.
Kakati otegeeza ki? Ne bagamba nti no. Term limits are imposed by a president who fears his successor, like a Jerry Rawlings. Jerry Rawlings a hostile group would rule Ghana. Bamusasule byabakola yataba former leaders never restricting up for 8 years. Era constitution ya Kenya, constitution ya Ghana kugamba no president of Ghana shall rule Ghana for more than 2 terms of 4 years each. There is no lacuna. The constitution of Uganda says no president of Uganda shall rule Uganda for more than 2 terms of 5 years each, but once he gets two-thirds majority, is amendable. Tewali kola kuna. Yachireka mula kuna.
Nende leo zitolida kwa nuchichi kila soro kwa amending.
Bacha amendinga.
Auntie?
Yes.
Atene constitution.
Kakati ni watu gamba. Why did we amend the constitution? Because we had it. We had the term limits. They were amended. Now when you reinstate the term limit under the same president, you are abusing him. China kugamba one. Logically, with our unlimited term of office, you can only reinstate the term limits when there is a new leader. Ntimukazi wanga out of history to say in kwa account yemu. So if she divorces me and she goes away, the new wife cannot enjoy
privileges.
Tebaso malugi.
Olita iza government ya ulinga yavude mudia. Nenyingira okati ne bank account zera yange.
Yes.
Kagiri question.
Is not automatic. Kitegeza. Nti eminence bwakugante jakola nga program buli lunaku. Najja nakugakola yo biri. Does it mean diminishing returns?
No. Kati obo weddemu.
Kakati you can
program buli.
Yes. You cannot reinstate term limits when Museveni is still around.
Obo muvuma.
Obo muvuma. Nti gutwawa kirisi yono.
Tuchimujeko.
Toshasobola kuvuga kamunye jitu samasaka no gikomyawo. Kati katufunende conduct amanyi okuvuga ona abavuga nnyo. You cannot reinstate change conditions on the same president. You can always say Bavumono nti gwetwawa kirisi yegwe gwoli mulala kati. You are suffering from diminishing returns.
Wabati abuti nti President Museveni ayinza ogenda Semakula najja kukuteka utamu.
Anti kubolira mu America tekyaliyo term limit yali mu America. In 1956 umusajja n'abawangula emirundi eki ne bategeera abongera Congress n'ekireta, but Congress was dominated, it was a coup. Baali kyebakina ne bakireta ekitegeeza tikiyinza kuddawo mu mwali mukina ne mukijjawo. You cannot bring it under the same person. Mwina kugamba now that is the person we gave an unlimited term of office because of his contribution to the liberation of this country has gone. We have to review because we are not sure that the person who will come and succeed him anabanga ye. 2, term limits are influenced by a person who is unpopular. Abagamba ndi wa kisanja kimu abamu basobola mulonda oyo tumuyita consensus candidate tuyinda n'ekirala. When the man knows Mbabazi yali amanyi tayina ugundi era ye kubuli yali akoze kugenda nambole ku influence
ayingire mu
kibiina. Yes. Ya unpopular candidates influence oba if you know kati ekisanja nabagamba they had known in the second year ne bagala bakikyuse kya 2011 they proposed to this kisanja this change even if the president was shown in. They are sponsoring the same they are sponsoring the same under the same conditions. What does it mean? Why are you panicking? Did the president suffer health problems? Bubala was a titulo was 2 these are lawyers. Some are lawyers. Mu psychology batugamba nti obwongo bufa olwankizaayate obwongo bufa olwokwagala ennyo nti emmotoka gy'ovaamu nti jam yetambula era baddayo jamu si yesibye emmotoka obwongo bwo bwafudde
olwawasiwasi gy'olina.
Kakati these people fear to go back. Era nabawulidde nga bagamba nti abantu abasinze okugwa be bawagira ekisanja okukikyusa
bakasiba nti bakiwagira
nti therefore nti baliizoninga nti therefore the new MPs bayinza obutakatambula ku bya government. That's why we need 5 billion. When we use 5 billion nankabiro nalikanga akoleza omuliro with 5 billion alikenga akoleza omuliro nankabiro should take on Kadaga bear nako
Camera graph.
Have the recordings. I know Yagami Nanga graph was in Zijeko. Anybody was sand on my way. I even hear people. When I raise my head, what's wrong with me? Becoming a president of Uganda. I hear people who making a noise like this drunkard. I say this drunkard.
President of Uganda.
I had agreed that this drunkard should be paid the compensation. But when I went back, I said, why? The drunkard has caused us trouble. How can a drunkard cause you trouble? It ceases to be a drunkard. If a drunkard can cause you trouble for 7 years.
How consent?
Zitanze twala mu nsozi wafe ne mukunamira. Katazi kwa kwata. Je blocking account ya.
Njagana ne mtwala.
Nagene mu bank.
Kajiri bazindi.
Sende mu blocking.
Sende nyinyi zotabalo twale mu nsozi. Almali abasoyi baganti
ezizene kwatako
mazimpe
nzitwala mu nsozi wafe sisobola
alamain
ngabo nkuga sisobola genda wakandoka. I will never go to Kandoka's office.
But he's a good man.
But Kandoka, I want him to deny the corporation.
Yes, yeah, in a problem.
And the vehicle whether
I don't think
they don't belong. What I can understand is the goons acted on their own to police Kandoka.
That's okay.
Yes.
They wanted to police
the Kandoka kalabe ku kofini anaba wa kofini anazika ko anaba wa kumere je balideyo
for trying to please. Okay.
Nze namuzawo.
Tufe kompota.
Nze
Douglas abada mpeza message wano nti Tamala ababonereze matemika.
Abaziba bagamba. Nti okatera mandwa nti njiniyeseza akayoka libakalijo. Nti bwokuba munnadini oba omusawo Muganda osobola omunyesa mu ngoye kuba muntu naye kasituka ku ttaka kasituka ku ttaka bwati kasituka okatera mandwa nti njiniyeseza akayoka libakalijo
ekitegeeza
nti osobola okuba mandwa n'ojinyesa mu ngoye naye bwesituka ku ttaka kyekukola. You can beat my son. Now, a man kasitesituka. A man nesituka. A man kasitesituka. A man nesituka. A man tekubwa. A man tekubwa. A man tekubwa. A man tekubwa. Okatera mandwa anti njiniyeseza akayoka libakalijo. Ndio oyikuba ate munadinya ina chimuntu gwe mukuba munyese mugandula naye bwasituka kutaka bwati kyakukola
nzaje agenda sema kwa chikusoma
uchiwulira
mukama watukumira
uchiwulira
acha admin ngramsiza wewe wale kwera
ejo kulikuita mumpata myaganya je nyuma ejo
mukama wange ndo mukama wange ndo mukama wange ndo mukama